All right, sounds good. Thanks everybody. Thanks for having us back. Cloud Field Day 6 should be twice as good as Cloud Field Day 3. Thanks, Stephen and Ken. I'm here, Brad Parks, so I manage business development, go-to-market. I'm here with Dave Estes, our co-founder, VP of engineering, definitely the biggest brain between the two of us. But I figured for the first 15 minutes or so, he thinks it's going to take me 30 because he knows me pretty well. But I'm going to try and set the table, do a little bit of intro, context setting. We love Q&A. He loves Q&A. We'll try and get through it. If you look at the agenda, we're going to hit kind of basic platform foundation stuff. We'll get into automation pretty deep, talk about the feature set. So as I go through this intro bit, take a look at the agenda, and we'll probably get to your deeper questions. That way we don't blow through the Q&A in this first 15, 20 minutes. So first, kind of Morpheus Data, what are we? We are a cloud automation and cloud management platform. Traditionally, there are a couple categories of product that fall into cloud management. Oftentimes it means something a little bit different for everybody. So part of what I want to do in this intro is put a little context around what we mean when we talk about cloud management and hybrid IT. But as the title slide here says, we, at our heart, we help big, complex companies act more like little bitty startups. That's kind of our goal through automation. I was actually just talking about this with Chris. It was not a setup, but probably the best movie ever, and certainly one I can quote to heart. But one of the best lines I like is, "I don't think that word means what you think it means." And there are a lot of terms in our industry, in cloud particularly, that are ripe with contention. Not that anyone's wrong, but I want to try and go through in this next little bit, talk about what we mean when we use those words without getting into a religious debate over multi-cloud versus hybrid cloud, because we could easily burn 90 minutes just having that debate. But a couple of the ones that are a little bit different when we talk about them, one of them is cloud. When Dave and I talk about cloud, we're referring to an elastic pool of resources that's available on demand. Seems simple, but I've been at VMUGs where we have multi-cloud mentioning, and someone will say, "Hey, I use VMware, I don't use cloud." I say, "Well, that's because you're not really using VMware the way you could, not because that's just the way VMware is." So whether it's bare metal, whether it's containers, Acropolis, VMware, AWS, Google, to us, if it's elastic and on demand, we'll refer to it as a cloud, because that's a lot of what we do. On-prem, we know the debate around that. Another one's software-defined. One of the things that we see, kind of our problem domain, is software-defined data center. I think most of the companies I've talked to hundreds of customers, have a software-definable data center, meaning that they've bought a half dozen software-definable things that are glued together by human middleware and tickets passing between teams, and they really haven't gotten to that last mile of automation. And that's a big part of where we play, right? It's not as easy as just, hey, I can clone a VM, that's easy. Or I can figure out what platform choice I want to make. But really, if you think about the development teams that are out there, why it's taking them 3-4+ weeks to get the resources that they want when they ask service delivery for, hey, I need my app stack deployed, is the mountain of tools that the IT team has to wade through to actually stand up an application stack, right? Whether that's front-end requests through ServiceNow, preserving IP addresses, setting up DNS, configuring load balancers, logging, monitoring, backup. All of the end-to-end lifecycle, minutia that is important, but takes a lot of time if you haven't orchestrated it properly. So software-defined is one of those terms that means a little bit different when we say it. We want to enable a fully software-defined data center by bridging all those domains. Because it takes that long to get anything done, that's largely what's driven growth of public cloud, right? People just going around IT, at least in the compute space. Now those same public clouds are being tossed back to central IT to care and feed. A lot of you guys in your day jobs in the channel deal with this all day long, right? So we routinely are talking to customers who have 3 or more platforms or clouds that they're trying to deal with. Again, even if they're not in the public cloud, they've got legacy apps. They're trying to do things with containers and Kubernetes. So the amount of platforms and clouds that IT is having to manage is becoming more and more complex. While at the same time, you've got skills gaps of folks trying to deal with that ongoing complexity. So, little motherhood and apple pie, but we see it all day long. So why are we maybe uniquely relevant in helping to address that that space. So Morpheus Data, we got our start actually about 9 years ago as a tool set, but we've only been on the scene from an outbound perspective a little over three to 4 years. So our founders, my CEO was actually a managing director, one of the co-founders of Sierra Ventures here in the Bay Area. For about 20 years, he was in VC, helping companies, in tech grow. But about 9 years ago, he went into private equity. But his play in private equity was actually to buy companies where he saw the application of technology as an opportunity to help those companies differentiate and be worth more money, what the way investors do. To achieve that outcome, he created essentially his own systems integrator application development firm, Bertram Labs, and gave them that mission. Walk into these heterogeneous mix of companies, help them figure out what's what, deploy new apps very quickly, govern them, and then run them with a really lean operating team, because investors like making money, not spending it. So they had to be very efficient, but very fast. So they looked around at what tools were available publicly 9 years ago to get that job done. They just didn't find everything they needed. So over the course of about 5 years, pulled together a lot of intellectual property, over dozens of projects, thousands of application deployments, and fast forward, about 4 or 5 years ago, said, hey, we've got something here. A lot of other companies seem to have the same challenge. We should package it up. So as a tool, we've got about 9 years of bake time, but go to market, we're probably just now hitting our stride. And that's probably one of the reasons we have a little bit different angle into the cloud management space. We came from a development kind of centric background where we were worried about application deployment. We're very app-centric. So the core of the platform is enabling self-service for development teams who are trying to manage the full application lifecycle. Over the course of kind of dealing with that, though, there are kind of 4 key areas that routinely come up when we're talking to customers. So first, there's still a lot of customers who just don't know what they have. We were at a very large retailer last year. A good example, we asked the head of IT, how many VMs are we working with, just to get a scope. He said it's about 10,000. 10,000 VMs, great, awesome. We put our proof of concept in. About 5 days later, we came back and said, ooh, bad news, you got about 25,000 VMs, and you've got a 6-figure overage each month in Amazon because that dev group over there really likes Ferraris and they never drive them. So just figuring out what you have, enabling right sizing, that's a core part of the platform. But for us, that's really a symptom of a larger problem, which is not having governance, right? So second core pillar of the platform, and all these are features that Dave's going to go in deep on, is around role-based access, multi-tenancy, fine-tuned granularity over who can do what, when, and where, all the policies that go into keeping you from having that right-sizing problem again. So these first 2 attributes really are core to the ops side of the equation. But one of the things we find as we're talking to customers, as we're looking competitively out in market, there are a lot of tools that ops guys like, and then they say to developers, hey, guess what? Have I got the tool for you? And the development team says, no, you're making me change my processes. The API sucks. Like I can't do what I need to do. On the flip side, there are tools the development team might love. Say, hey, this is gonna, if you implement this, I'll never bother you again. And the ops team says, are you kidding? I'm not a programmer for a reason. That doesn't have the guardrails I want. So we really try and see dev and ops as first-class citizens together. So the third key pillar is kind of a dev-centric approach to automation. So full fidelity API CLI, enabling infrastructure as code, working into the pipelines that people already have without forcing a whole bunch of change. We want to make the processes people already have work better without being insertive of forcing a whole bunch of process change on them.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Stat, because you put up provision 150 times faster. Is
I'm in
there a
marketing.
specific thing that you're referring to that's 150 times faster?
Actually, that was from a case study. So AstraZeneca is one of our good public case studies. They were using a 3-letter acronym automation tool. They'd been trying to deploy for about 2 years. It was still taking them about 50 hours from request to receiving back their stack from an application development perspective. They decided to go in a different direction. They found us. We had their proof of concept rolled out in a day. We had them deployed globally in 6 data centers in about 60 days. Now they spin up and tear down close to 1,000 VMs a day, and it takes them less than 20 minutes. So, 80 hours divided by, my math's a little rough. I took some liberties, but yeah, going from weeks to minutes gets you provisioning speed. And we've rinsed and repeated that story across lots of accounts. So
your provisioning speed isn't push the button, now something exists. It's the entire project lifecycle.
Yeah, it is. So let's say I go in through ServiceNow or our service catalog and say, hey, I need a 3-node scaled out Tomcat server. Like, go. Because we've blueprinted that on the back end, we're going to go in Infoblox, get an IP, register the DNS, configure the load balancer, talk to Ansible, create the machine, manage state, deploy a logging agent, backup, in place, done, here you go. Like, that's what we string together. And again, the last mile of going from software definable to software defined, right, is the actual operationalizing of the Death Star, right? Pulling together all those pieces that have APIs that most people haven't actually done that work around. The last piece, it's kind of core but oftentimes left off, is day 2 operations, right? Once your app's deployed, developers need access to logging, to monitoring, to scaling, to change management, to patching, all the day 2 automation that's core, because apps live for a long time and you got to care and feed them. So that's the last core part of the platform.
So is this on any cloud, on-prem, public cloud? Any cloud?
Absolutely. We support 13, 14. We have probably the broadest cloud coverage.
I think it's close to 30, actually.
Yeah.
I counted earlier.
So again, using our definition of the word cloud, right? Any endpoint that we're going to make elastic and on demand. So it could be bare metal. We've got integration of things like UCS, HP OneView for bare metal. We've got our own internal Pixie boot, VMware, KVM, OpenStack, you name it. We probably have it.
I'm guessing that you'll get into that nitty-gritty a bit later, but I just wanted to check at this point that because you integrated with so many different products, when a product releases a new version, a new feature, how long it is before you actually get that introduced into your tool set?
Dave's really smart. In all actuality, we get that asked a lot, right? Wow, you integrate with 80 different things. How on earth do you keep up? I think fundamentally the core APIs of what we're tapping into aren't changing time and time again, right? You've got companies coming out with new features, but the base level primitives of I need to get an IP address, I need to release an IP address. And the things that we do from an orchestration perspective are not changing, dramatically. You've got companies adding new features, and sure, we upgrade and keep up, but it's less painful than it would appear at face value.
Yeah, but APIs do change over time.
For existing feature sets, yes, I agree with you. But for I think what Arthur was talking about was like new services.
Yep.
Like when AWS spins up a new.
Yeah, we'll get into kind of the paths kind of discussion, and they'll launch like, hey, it's AWS reInvent. Here's 1,000 new things. Yeah, how do we keep up with that? Yeah, let's table that just for later.
Even AWS can't keep up, so we're not. We get it.
Right.
Yeah, our core is tapping into compute and being the agnostic layer between some of those underpinning stories. So that's kind of a fundamental on going deep on cloud native services with a given public cloud provider versus being an abstraction across anybody's compute.
The flip side on the other side is while there's new things, a number of features continue to get deprecated, and that's a big problem, especially across all the fill and blank of your favorite Kubernetes instance or any of the other things in the various cloud providers. Like, hey, your business runs on this. Cool. Yeah. We eliminated that, so change your business now. Thank you. Yeah. We're Amazon.
Even things as simple. We're helping a very, very large, well-known company move off a bunch of Windows 2008 stuff right now. I mean, there's a lot out there that.
Good times.
What's that?
To R2.
So, question.
Close.
Yeah.
Cisco and VMware.
Yeah.
So, does this work well with like ACI and ACI and the Cloud APIC? So, with ACI Anywhere, so if we use this as the orchestration layer, can we use that in conjunction with, say, the Cloud APIC, which is in AWS, as well as with ACI on-prem?
You've got very specific. So we do have ACI integration. We have networking covered in part of David's pitch later, so maybe we table that just for,
and then the same with NSX and NSX on Amazon.
Yep, we're at NSX. We've got NSXV, we're adding T here, the next release. So yeah, we're really driven primarily by customer demand. I know everyone says that, but if you look at our integration kind of list, the things that we tap into, we're kind of getting back to this. So think about application lifecycle, right? So the Bertram team that built out this tool did not have a multi-billion-dollar IT budget. So they actually built a lot of native services into the platform for their own use. So their own IPAM, their own repository, their own logging engine, their own backup, their own monitoring stack. So there are a lot of tools in this space that are essentially API aggregators, right? They do well with other people's stuff. One of the things that sets us apart is the team has actually built their own service modules for every part of that life cycle. It's a little bit different, and so when we need to add third-party integration, one of the ways we're able to move so fast is the team has a little more depth of expertise in those given areas. So over the last 4 years, back to customer demand, when we kind of came out of and be an internal tool and starting to talk with big Fortune 2000 enterprises, obviously we're not expecting them to just insert us, right? We want to take a lot of the stuff they already have and just make it work better together. So as we've engaged with big customers, that's where we've added, things like ServiceNow, like IPAM, some of the others. So a lot of the tools that we have today are built off customer demand over the last few years. I'd say today, when we walk into a big enterprise, we're probably checking 95% of the boxes, whereas 3 years ago, it was like, hey, no, but we can, and 60 days later, out it came. So the product's matured a lot. So the ACI integration we have is based on a specific customer that wanted it. I don't think we have anyone who's actually using the extended.
I need a good
cloud
orchestrator
version
for my end-to-end story.
Yeah.
So
we're probably pretty close, and if there's a piece that's missing, we'll add it to the roadmap.
And I should mention there's ways to extend it as well. You have the ability to extend the platform as well.
Yeah.
So if there's not a integration we have, there's still ways to tie that into the service.
Yeah, one of the things Dave's going to get to certainly in this section is again, back to I don't think that means what you think it means. The word integration means different things to different people. To us, integration doesn't mean if you write a script, we'll execute it for you. Integration means we've actually done the work. You point us at your API endpoint, you enter in the right credentials, and you should have as much full fidelity as humanly possible. So it's one of the reasons we get up and running very, very quickly compared to a lot of the other automation stacks in there, because they literally have built, when I say over 75 integrations, those are first-class citizens. For things not on that list, we have a very robust automation workflow engine that can go execute against APIs if we need to round out the edges, and that's how we'd probably fill some of the gaps if there was a specific piece that we didn't already have.
So you have second-class citizens as well.
We're not going to be caste system here, but we love everybody. And then across platform, so platform independence is a big piece. So we talk to a lot of different clouds. Kind of the three key pieces I've already talked a little bit about. With that native approach to integrations, we do get up and running very quickly. We're not a SaaS platform, so we're actually install it where you want it. Some people say, why aren't you SaaS? We actually get a lot of business from banks and the government and healthcare and people who just don't like security holes that sometimes come with SaaS. And if 80% of the workloads are still on-prem, kind of relative to data gravity, there's workload gravity. Most of our customers are deploying on premises. We stand up in 15, 20 minutes. We connect to clouds very quickly. We've continually heard from customers, hey, you got more done in a couple hours than that last team of PS engineers got done in a couple of months. And it really is core to our value. Second piece is around being agnostic. A lot of big companies, there's no such thing as a homogeneous enterprise. So we are a vendor management strategy for a lot of CIOs as much as we are a orchestration automation tool, because they may not want to be 100% in bed with a VMware or a Red Hat or a Cisco even. They love those players, but they have a little bit of everything, and they need an orchestrator that'll pull the pieces together in a more agnostic way. And getting the time hook from the back. This is the last piece I do want to focus on a little bit, because it's going to kind of set up how we cover the rest of the agenda here today. So if you think about every storage presentation I ever did said data's growing. Every cloud presentation I've ever seen says you're on a journey. This is mine. What we see from a maturity perspective, 5 years ago the optimization, the lift and shift conversation was rampant. I think most people have found that that's kind of a little immature in their thinking, but there's still a lot of people who are still just trying to get their act together. Kind of the next phase, the middle part, really is where our core is. Little middle out reference for the Silicon Valley fans. We started in the middle with kind of automation of provisioning being really core to our platform. We added the optimization features, and David will go into them about a year and a half ago, and we've really built that out. But our core is around bringing dev and ops a little bit close together, automating that provisioning. And that's where we see a bulk of customers now kind of struggling with. But forward leaning, there are a lot of customers who are embracing infrastructure as code, really out there. It may not be enterprise wide, it might be certain teams, advanced development teams, new projects at the big enterprises, but we want to support that as well. So when we go through the next kind of few sections, we're going to break this apart, starting with that middle one. Then we're actually going to hit infrastructure as code and some of that automation. We'll cover the cost optimization last, because to be honest, it's the least sexy of the three and probably less interesting for you guys. So last piece I'd maybe point out is kind of classically CMP, cloud management platforms. Many of them came out of kind of an ops view. They made VMware better. That's where they got their start, and why I don't always describe us as a CMP is that wasn't what we set out to do. We wanted to help developers move very fast without ops getting in the way. By virtue of that, we actually meet all the requirements of a CMP, but in a lot of ways, we're also a lot like container management systems and some of the other automation tools that are out there that don't classically fit the CMP vernacular. All right, that is it. Any other questions for me, or we'll maybe segue and get into the fun stuff, which is smart guy.
If it's covered in a bit, you can say support for Anthos and for that container. Is that something that could be covered at all? Because if it's not, then I won't talk about it.
Support for it or perspective on it, I guess. Is,
yeah, integration we have with blah, 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 et cetera.
We did Azure Stack.
Refactorization.
Yeah, we might as well hit it now. It's not necessarily in one of the sections.
Drawing a blank right now for some reason.
So Google Anthos, Outpost, Azure Stack. We did Azure Stack a long time ago. We've talked with the Google team about some of their early Anthos stuff, especially with our platform support. We actually are, in a lot of ways.
And I know it's new. It's 6 months old at this point, which is new in the.
Nobody's asked for it. I'll say it from a customer perspective. But in a lot of ways, we're providing a layer that does some of what those do in a multi-cloud world. So there's kind of two dimensions to the conversation. Do you want to be 100% AWS, Google, or Azure and bring those on-prem, or do you want to kind of turn and maintain some platform independence for people who are re-platforming from one cloud stack to another? That's more what we see as our use case. But we haven't honestly bumped into it in a head-to-head where we've really had to go deep on one versus the other.
Cool.
Anything to add?
No, that's right.
Okay. See, sometimes I'm right.